Good afternoon, Year 3. How are we? It's Wednesday. I feel like I've spoken to you a lot, but I think it's because of the other video that I did on Tuesday. Speaking of that other video, if you've seen this video and you haven't voted for our class book yet, it's up there. Go and watch the video, go and choose which book you would like to read. Voting does close on Friday, so please, if you haven't done so already, can you go and vote for your class book? It will close on Friday lunchtime. I will thank you for those students who have been emailing me. If I get any more emails, I'll make sure I mention that. So if you haven't done it, then you will do. It's a long story. I want as many people to vote as possible by Friday, because I currently have 6 people voting, which is 20% of our class. So hopefully a few more of you will vote. So, The Boy Who Grew Dragons. As I said on Monday, I am going to read the last 2 chapters of this book. If you remember, we have just met the super dragon that's come out of the dragon fruit tree, and we think a figure has just come out of the garden to investigate what's going on. So, chapter 23. Sometimes it's the little things. The thing about a dragon the size of an elephant is you can't really hide it up your jumper, or even stand in front of it whistling nonchalantly and hoping the person doesn't notice. And let's face it, when toxic smelling green flames are lighting up the sky around you, there isn't really anything you can do. So there wasn't much point trying to hide the truth from Grandad any longer. He came to a stop in front of me, breathless and dishevelled. His mouth hung open, and his eyes ping-ponged between me and the rather large dragon behind. Also, it's Grandad, not Grim. Funnily enough, the main thing I felt was relief. It was as if the great big prickly hedge of fibs that had been raised to the ground by dragonfire. I stepped forward, and Flicker flew down and settled onto my shoulder. His scales shimmered, flickering through every colour. For a minute, the chaos in the garden and the fire-belching dragon still setting things alight all went into freeze frame, and there was just me and Grandad again. I smiled. I couldn't help it, and the thing I suddenly realised when Grandad's eyes lit up with that twinkle of his was that I hadn't ever needed to grow the prickly head in the first place. Well, Chipstick, looks as if we might have something to talk about after all. And he grinned. There wasn't time for the whole story, of course, but that could wait. He could see the problem. I had intended to point the finger at Liam, but the sneak was already legging it down towards the hedge, cradling the grey dragon, who was still supersizing things with every breath. Typical. Trust Liam not to stick around to face up to the trouble he caused. He'll have to wait, Ted said, watching Liam disappear. For now, anyway. So what's the plan? Everyone looked at me again. I looked at Grandad, but he shrugged. You're the expert, Chipstick. I'll follow orders on this one. Beans are more my area of expertise. All I've got is a raspberry net, and somehow I don't think they'll be much good for catching this fella. I stared at the dragon, who was chomping its way through some giant lettuces and demolishing the rest of Grimm's vegetables with every flick of its tail. We need to get it up in the air, I said. The dragons usually feed up and then fly off. That's what all the others do. Except for these guys, Grandad said, looking up at Crystal, Dodger, Sunny and Flicker, who were hovering above our heads. Well, yeah, except for them, I grinned. The thing is, those wings don't look like they'll get it very far, said Kai. You'd be surprised, said Grandad. Think about the bees. They don't look like they should fly, but they do. But there they go, buzzing merrily about. Maybe it just needs a bit of a lift to get it going. Ted looked at me. Reckon a full-on fiery fart should do the trick. Let's help it by gathering up as much food as we can. If it's like Sunny, the more it eats, the bigger the reaction. There's the dragon, look. The size of an elephant. Broccoli and beans, Grandad cried. That'll get it going. Well, it always works for me anyway, he chuckled. We hurried about collecting as many vegetables as we could, and the dragon played its part by eating whatever we produced. Our own dragons joined in, dropping little offerings into a pile. Suddenly, the dragon paused and its belly started glowing an intense, lurid green. It shuddered, and knowing what was coming, we all dived for cover. Even the dragon seemed to know that this was the one that would do the trick. It lifted its head and stretched up its neck, unfurled its wings, and readied itself for launch. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, called Ted. The dragon blasted off, choking on the smell from the green fog it had unleashed. We watched, hoping to see it soar skywards and away. But having got off the ground, the dragon just flapped around awkwardly a few metres into the air, sending out more belches that set light to what was left of Grandad's vegetables. It's not going anywhere, Kai cried. I can see that, I yelled back. I called to Flicker. We need your help, Flicker. I stretched out my arm, looking hopefully at the little dragon. Flicker shone a bright, brilliant red and zipped down towards me. I grinned. Blast the dragons at the ready, I called. Everyone soon cottoned on, and a moment later we were all standing there with our dragons gripping our sleeves. We need to shepherd it upwards, I said desperately. Stop it thinking it can hang around for another spot of lunch. Cat lowered her head to Crystal and whispered something. Her head let out a shot of ice straight at the dragon's tail, making it twist away from the tree it was about to crash into. Sonny soon joined in, belching flames for all he was worth, and Kai and Dodger showed how the hours of water balloon practice had paid off by launching cucumbers at the dragon whenever it started veering the wrong way. The trouble was, while Crystal sprayed out tiny icicles and Sonny's unpredictable flames, the lumbering dragon just seemed to get confused and blundered around even more. The final straw came when Dodger belched into the green of the dragon's scales, then suddenly started darting out in front of its flash of shocking pink. The dragon was so startled it started swooping down towards us until I thought it was going to crash land. Suddenly, Flicker let go of my arm and I watched him disappear into Grim's shed. I couldn't blame him for getting out the way. I knew he didn't have the firepower of Sonny or Crystal, or even the stealth factor of Dodger. Then I noticed Cat peering into the shed. She suddenly turned and called to me. Thomas, I think Flicker's had an idea. I raced over and she pointed at him. He was hopping from foot to foot on Grim's old computer, his nose stabbing at the keys. The music, I said, suddenly understanding. Cat nodded. They loved it, didn't they? Maybe if you play it to that dragon, it'll calm down a bit. It's worth a try, I said. Flicker flitted out of the door as Cat bent over the keyboard. There's something called pomp and circumstance, she said. What do you think dragons like? I really don't think it matters, I said. But I was wrong about that. Cat's fingers tapped the keyboard and music blared out. It sounded very calming. Sure enough, when we dashed outside to look, the dragons were responding to the music, to the marching rhythm. Dodger and Crystal started hurtling back and forth over our heads, and the huge dragon began thrashing and bucking madly. This is no good, I shouted. It's whipping them up into even more of a frenzy. Try something else. I watched Cat scanning the screen. Serenade for strings, she cried. That sounds a bit more like it. A brief silence was followed by an altogether calming sound. Flicker started circling upwards, turning and twisting into a spiralling dance along with the lifting melody. We watched with held breath, waiting to see what the enormous dragon would do. For a second, it didn't look as if the changed music had made any difference. But then the huge lumbering shape stopped thrashing about and turned to look up. Its eyes locked on Flicker. The little dragon was spinning above its massive head, flicking different colours, blazing red and fiery orange and electric blue. He lit up the sky, shining brilliantly like a beacon. Slowly, lifting Lifted up by the music, Flicker rose higher, and the bright dragon began to follow, captivated by the sound and mesmerised by the colour-changing glow from Flicker's little form. Then, Crystal, Sunny and Dodger flew in and joined Flicker in the dance, leading the dragon higher still. "I think it's working," Tad shouted, and we cheered them on, Grandad calling his encouragement along with the rest of us. Higher and higher the dragon flew, until eventually the huge shape became a small dot, and one by one our dragons flew back down, returning to Ted, Cat and Kai. But I couldn't see Flicker. Grandad came and stood next to me and rested his hand on my shoulder. He gave it a little squeeze. I wasn't worried. There's the dragon in the sky, look. And there's Flicker. I knew Flicker wouldn't just leave, but I don't think I really let out a breath until I saw the little flickering orange glow appear again and began to make its way down towards me. Flicker settled on my shoulder. He curled his tail around my neck till the tip of it tickled my ear and nestled his head under my chin. As usual, his shimmering red body glowing like a hot ember, and right then, as the warmth pulsed through me, I really felt as if I was glowing too. Chapter 24. Deal or no deal? I turned to Grandad. Grim's not going to be happy when he sees all this, I said. You know, I thought he was hurting the dragon fruit tree. Turns out he was bathing his plants in music, not chemicals. He's as green as you are. The truth was that after all that time thinking it was my fault, if I'm honest, it had been a relief to blame Grim. I'd been so busy pointing the finger at him, I hadn't seen what had been really going on. Grandad chuckled. So old Jim's not so bad after all, then, eh? I raised my eyebrows. I wasn't sure I'd go that far, but I was sorry about the state of his garden. It's a terrible mess, I said sadly. I'm not sure he'll be winning the annual show this year, not unless he's going for some smoothie category. Grandad surveyed the destruction. Reckon you're right, and I don't think we'll be able to blame this one on the pesky bugs, he said with a grin. He ruffled my hair. We'll just have to tell him the truth. I stared at him. We can't do that, I cried. Hold your horses, Chipstick, let me finish. We'll tell him the truth that there was an explosive gas incident in his garden. If he wants to think it's the methane kind in those compost bins rather than the massive dragon with stomach problems, then who are we to correct him? I laughed. You really think he'll believe that? I reckon most people would sooner accept that than believe in dragons. Sad though it is. Sad for them, I said, not sad for us. We have to protect the dragons. We need to keep them secret. It's bad enough that Liam knows. Grandad nodded and rubbed his chin, looking thoughtful. He didn't speak for a bit, while he bent and picked up a snail slowly making its way over to one of the enormous aubergines. It's good that you want to protect the dragons, Thomas, but you know you can't keep them here. Not really. You do know that, don't you? What do you mean? I said. Well, you saw what a mess the dragon's made of everything. But that was because it grew so fast, I said quickly. Liam's dragon breathed on the fruit and supersized it. Ours aren't like that. Grandad sighed. Not right now, they're not, but they will grow, and who knows how fast. You can't have 4 huge dragons living with you. Apart from anything else, I think people would start to notice them then. I realised I was shaking my head. Inside, I felt my heart drop, squashing my earlier happiness like a brick flattening an overexcited cheerleading ant. I'm sorry, Thomas. But it's the summer holidays soon. We've got so much planned, I pleaded. Grandad smiled. I bet you do. And we'll have a fair bit more to talk about now, won't we? He smiled. I've missed our chats. Me too, I said. How about this? You keep them till the end of the holidays, Grandad said. My brain started spinning. It would give us some time at least, and maybe Grandad would change his mind. But then you have to let them go, he said, looking at me straight in the eye. Deal? I looked over at Flicker, perched on the dragon fruit tree. It was starting to look healthier already without the huge dragon fruit sapping its strength. Flicker shone gold and bobbled his head up and down, sending a spray of sparks into the air. With every atom of my being crossed, I whispered, "Deal." I turned back to the others. Kat was cradling Crystal, who was breathing out frost circles around her arm. Dodger had obviously decided there was no need to be shy around Grandad, and had turned an electric blue. He was happily collecting raspberries in his claws and dropping them into Sunny's open mouth from even greater heights. "Now that's true friendship," Ted laughed. "How come I don't get to sit around while you guys feed me?" "Here you go," Kai laughed and threw a mushy raspberry at him. "If I'd had time to actually open my mouth, then that might have actually gone in," Ted said, wiping the squelchy mess off his face. I watched them lobbing raspberries at each other and wondered how on earth I was going to tell them what I just agreed to. I thought of all the cool things that dragons could do. Crystal with her ice breathing, Sunny with his awesome flames, and Dodge the ultimate in stealth. And then I thought of Flicker. Thanks to him, the supersized catastrophe of supersized dragons on the loose in our little village had been averted. How could we ever let them go? And go where? We didn't even know where home was for dragons. But then I felt Flicker settle on my shoulder. He curled his tail around my neck and blew a warm breath in across my cheek. His scales flickered and glowed, and I thought maybe things would be okay after all. Maybe we could find a way to keep the dragons. Maybe we could even find out what they called home. After all, I had the map now. Perhaps there was more Elvie had to tell us than just how much ash to use. And maybe we'd tackle Liam and his supersizing dragon in the process. Okay, that was a lot of maybes, with the odd perhaps sprinkled in there for good measure. But here's what I've realised. Flicker didn't just shine with bright colours, he shone with bright ideas too, like a lightning bolt in the middle of a storm, a beacon lighting the way. Together I felt sure we would be prepared for anything. Well, that's what I thought anyway. But of course, this isn't the end of the story. Not by a long shot. And that's it. And that's Lolly actually, I think, isn't it? At the end. I'm so glad we finished it. I'm so glad we've actually finished the book. Let me know what you thought of the book. Let me know if you want to pick me or to pick up the next one. Are you more, because this is actually 4 and this is the second one, so there's another one if you want to read it. Let me know if you're interested in reading that next book. Please, if you haven't voted already, go up to the top of the page and vote for our next book. Hopefully, if you've got this far, you would have done already. And spread the word, so make sure your friends do it too. And I'll see you on Friday with our new book. See you soon. Bye.